The thing that has surprised and impressed me the most is, and people told me this, Indiana has all the attributes and pieces of a big city, arts, culture, sports, business, investment, but it really is a small town and everyone is really connected. The business community, civic leaders, government leaders.
Vanessa Green Sinders, valuing the Hoosier way of doing business. She spent most of her career in the big city, places like Chicago and Washington, D.C. Now she's in Indiana, leading the largest business advocacy organization in the state. Meet Vanessa Green Sinders, the president and CEO of the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Vanessa Green Sinders grew up near Boston and has spent a good portion of her 25-year career on Capitol Hill, working in government and politics. She married a Hoosier from Clay County, and they decided 2 years ago it was time to move the family to Indiana. Now she's playing a key role in pushing business forward across the state. I am really pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by Vanessa Green Sinders, the president and CEO of the Indiana Chamber of Commerce. The Indiana Chamber, and Vanessa, great to see you. I almost said the new president, but technically you've been on the job right now this month for a year, right?
Yes. People have told me I can no longer use the new term, so I'm just the president and CEO. So it's been a month. A year.
A year. You have hit the ground running. To be sure, traveled all over the state. I was trying to, as we got started here, I know, I saw you at the Rally Innovation Conference here recently in downtown Indianapolis. By the way, what did you think of that? It's second year for that conference focused on entrepreneurs and innovation, technology. Christopher Day, Toph Day at Elevate Ventures is really the kind of the mastermind behind that. What'd you think of the conference this year?
Well, look, I think that it is great how that conference brings innovation and entrepreneurship and just creative new energy that is happening all across Indiana, and making sure that people across the country and the world know that we are the real deal and we are innovating and we are doing all these cool things. So I think it's really exciting to bring that type of event to Indianapolis and Indiana. And it really just showcases all the great stuff that so many different entities have going on in the state.
Yeah, I think there is a feeling, I tend to share this feeling, that Indiana's reputation, persona, whatever you want to call it, is beginning to change as more of a place where innovation and entrepreneurship does happen. For the longest time, certainly that wasn't the case. And maybe that's a generally kind of a Midwest kind of thing. But I think Indiana's status in the innovation world is beginning to change a bit. You come from outside of Indiana, but have connections in Indiana. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what were your perceptions of Indiana before you arrived at the Indiana Chamber?
Yes, I grew up in New England, spent a long time in DC that we'll probably get into later, and then came to Indiana 2 years ago with my family. And I think I always knew Indiana was a great place, welcoming, Midwestern, great values. But I didn't realize all of the innovation and the investment and the commitment to excellence and just how great Indiana really is. I say this all the time. I'm like, people just have to come, and then they realize like there is a reason why we are ranked so high on all those lists for best places to operate a business, grow a business, live, have a family. And it has been really exciting to be here in Indiana for the last 2 years and be able to now at the chamber see what's next, right? How can we keep that competitive nature and how can we continue to grow? Is
there a big surprise that you've had since arriving in Indiana, in particular your last year leading the Indiana Chamber? Anything that has stood out that's really surprised you? Kind of wow, I didn't realize that about Indiana.
The thing that has surprised and impressed me the most is, and people told me this, Indiana has all the attributes and pieces of a big city, arts, culture, sports, business, investment, but it really is a small town and everyone is really connected. The business community, civic leaders, government leaders. And I was sitting at the Senator Richard Lugar statue unveiling yesterday, and then at the Economic Club lunch with Secretary Rice, and thinking, how cool is it for Indianapolis to be celebrating this great international leader, former Senator Dick Lugar, with another international leader, Secretary Rice, and how the state and the community came together to do that. I think is just, whether it's the, things like the swimming trials, the All-Star game, the rally conference, like Indiana comes together to do these great things. And it has been so exciting and energizing to just see that firsthand and then think about how we can grow that even more.
Talk about the Indiana Chamber, because everyone knows that name, the Indiana Chamber. But some people listening to this podcast might not fully understand the role of the Chamber and what it does. The largest business advocacy group in the state for Indiana business, kind of the voice of Indiana business. Give folks a thumbnail description of the Indiana Chamber and what it's doing right now.
So we just celebrated our 100-year anniversary in 2022. So as you say, the Indiana Chamber is the state's largest broad-based business advocacy organization. We have 25,000 members and investors and supporters, over 4,000 member companies. And so we really do lean into the fact that we represent all sectors of business, all sizes of business, all regions across the state. And from an advocacy perspective, we have an amazing lobbying team that works day in and day out at the legislature with government officials, trying to make sure that the laws on the books are going to continue to be supportive and cultivate that world-class business environment that we have come to expect and have used to really grow the state. But, we also are so much more than advocacy is our base and kind of our home. But then we do business education for companies across the state, compliance seminars, trainings, conferences. We have a wellness council that is helping employers address wellness challenges in their workforce. We have a workforce institute that's doing the same thing on the workforce side. We have a foundation that does policy research and really tries to think about where does the state need to go and provide some of that research to help inform those discussions with policymakers and other stakeholders. And I think for me, as we look ahead to the future of the chamber, I think there is such an exciting opportunity to build on all of that success and really lean into our ability and spot as a convener in the state to bring together different businesses and different stakeholders to, I like to say, address those opportunities or challenges, some other people might say, that we're going to face and how we're going to continue to lead. And I think that the chamber can play a really important role in that.
I know since taking over your leadership role at the chamber, you've been around the state, visited a lot of different and had conversations with a lot of different businesses, large and small. Can you kind of crystallize? I mean, what are you hearing out there? Are there any common themes that you're hearing from Indiana business as we wind down 2024? We've got obviously a big election coming up, both nationally and statewide here. What are you hearing from Indiana business?
As you say, I have made it a mission to get to all regions of the state in my first year. And we've termed it my Partners in Prosperity Tour, because I really, all of these businesses, all of the local chambers that we partner with, it's all of this is only going to happen if we work together and we collaborate and we partner. So getting out and hearing that feedback from businesses and stakeholders is really important. I think that a couple things, every region of the state is different. So recognizing the different needs across the different regions, I think, is really important. What Evansville is interested in or needs to continue growing economically is different than what Fort Wayne needs and what Jeffersonville needs. And so I think as the statewide organization, it is really important to be there. That is another thing I've learned, that people, they want to see us as the chamber, and they want to hear from us, and they want to give us feedback face to face, which I think is great that we're post COVID and can do all of that. And so for me, being out and about is really important. And from an issue perspective, workforce, and a lot of people say, well, what do you mean by workforce? I think that continues to be a topic, whether it is worker availability, training, upskilling, attraction, but then also other things related to workforce like childcare. I continue to hear about the needs from employers for their employees for childcare, because if they're parents and they don't have childcare, they can't get to work. And some of the other, I would term childcare and things like healthcare infrastructure, right? But there's also other pieces of infrastructure that I hear about, from how are we addressing road funding next year to continuing to make sure we have the energy generation and transmission, water planning. There's lots of, I think, interest in making sure, I guess I would say the big theme that I hear overall that is common is Indiana is a great place to live and to own a business and to do things. And so how do we continue that success and take it to the next level? And what each region needs might be different, but that goal is all the same. And people are really committed to working together to figure it out.
You mentioned infrastructure, and certainly I think in recent years, Indiana has been on CNBC's list tops in the country when it comes to infrastructure, and certainly high profile. We just saw the I-69 completion here in Indiana, but which has been many decades in the works. The infrastructure piece isn't that kind of that sexy story out there that you hear about jobs and investment, but so important to growing the economy. You've got roads, as you mentioned water and energy. Indiana attracting so many of these big data centers that are obviously use a lot of electricity, a lot of water. Do you anticipate that piece of infrastructure, water, energy, reliability, availability are really going to be hot button issues going forward?
They're definitely going to be issues that are discussed, right? Because we need all of that infrastructure to continue growing and continuing that economic success that we've had. And so figuring out what those needs are and how we meet those needs going forward, I think is something that we're going to talk about. But I think it's a great opportunity, and we have so many great partners at the table, whether that's within the legislature or elected officials or businesses and other stakeholders, that Indiana has that can-do attitude, and we're going to work together and we're going to figure it out.
Do you think some people would suggest that this is Indiana's time to emerge on a more of a national, global stage, if you will? And if you look around the state at activity, not in every corner of the state, but if you look at what's happening in Northwest Indiana with all the investment and the infrastructure, the South Shore rail line improvements, Fort Wayne in the South Bend area, you can go around the state, most places, Jeffersonville with River Ridge Commerce Center. So there's a lot of activity. Is it an overstatement to say that this is Indiana's time to really break out and be competitive on that global stage?
No, I think this is our time. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity. And I say that to say, I think it has been our time too, but we need to continue to lean into it and take it to even a higher level. I am just a big believer that no matter how good you are, you can always do better. And I think in the world that we exist in, where there is emphasis on bringing manufacturing back to the US and kind of investing in our own resources, as you say, Indiana is really well positioned for a whole host of reasons, from our tax climate to our infrastructure to availability and cost of land and building and all of that. And so, this is our time, and it's really exciting.
Does Indiana need to do a better job, for lack of a better term, bragging about itself, selling itself to others outside of the state? That's been, Indiana, and I think it's a Midwest thing, probably doesn't brag very much on itself. I would suggest it's detriment many times, because there are many things going on that people don't know about, don't hear about, don't understand, and they have a different perception than maybe what the reality is here.
Look, I think that the more that we can share everything going on, the better off we're going to be, right? I mean, we started with the rally conference and talking about that. So yes, I think that the more we can just lean into those messages and share it, the more success we're going to have and the more people that are going to realize that Indiana is that great place and want to come and check it out. And I think there's been obviously a lot of focus on that and a lot of effort. And I think that's really exciting.
Much more ahead with Vanessa Green Sinders, the president and CEO of the Indiana Chamber. We'll talk about a little bit about her background, maybe where she came from, how she got to where she is today. We'll have those angles and much more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns. Stay with us.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week, Vanessa Green Sinders, the president and CEO at the Indiana Chamber. And Vanessa, as we talked about in the first part of the podcast, you've been on the job now for about 1 year, so relatively new. Let's talk about your background, because I think that background is an interesting one and seems to fit kind of perfectly for your role at the Indiana Chamber. You have been in an executive role at a Fortune 100 company, a lot of experience in D.C. on Capitol Hill and public policy. Talk about some of the stops you made on your way to Indiana.
I've made quite a few. That is one thing that when I think back on my career, that's, I guess, turning the corner on 25 years, I have definitely leaned into a diversity of professional experiences. And for me, that has been the recipe for success. I've also never had a 5-year plan. I've always just leaned into whatever I was doing, worked really hard, asked for more responsibility, and then the rest has taken care of itself, and had some great mentors. But the stops along my way that I would highlight. So I had a brief time in Chicago when I first graduated from college as a financial analyst, which really taught me the skills of PowerPoint presentations and Excel modeling, which I still use to this day.
Still use? Okay, very good.
But I then quickly decided DC was where I wanted to be. I'd always been interested in government and politics, and honestly, really wanting to contribute to my community, make a difference, be part of something bigger than myself. And I felt like DC was the place to do it. And I was really lucky to get to work for 2 distinguished U.S. senators over a 10-year stint. I started as a legislative correspondent, so like literally responding to constituent requests and emails. And that's when like we still actually, some of them actually wrote real letters. And so we had to respond with real mail. And I then was able to work my way up and ultimately was chief of staff for another U.S. senator. And it was to be that close to some of those national figures and to realize there are really good people on both sides of the aisle who are trying to get things done, whether that's staff or members. And I learned so much from those experiences. And then the senator I was working for at the time, Scott Brown, he lost re-election, which forced me to go into the private sector. And I had a couple of jobs there, heading up government affairs at a national trade association for the hotel industry, and then working at a Fortune 100 company, heading up their federal advocacy. But again, all of those, I think, really gave me the full breadth of advocacy and business connected, right? And managing and leading And I have to say, I am just really humbled and honored and feel very lucky to be in the place I am. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about the Indiana Chamber is the fact that I continue to get to give back and participate in my community and make the world a better place, one person at a time. And I find real value and energy in that involvement and community.
Yeah. Back to your Capitol Hill days. So you were chief of staff. You mentioned Senator Scott Brown. He was a high profile guy. What was it? What was that job like?
He was. So he won election. It was 2010. And I think no one thought a Republican was going to win in Massachusetts. And he did.
Yeah, right.
And I happened to be from Massachusetts. So I ended up going to work for him. The other senator I was working for, Judd Gregg, was retiring. And it was really cool to work for Scott Brown because at the time he was like the quote unquote 60th vote when 60 votes mattered in the Senate. And he was a New England Republican. So he tried to be very pragmatic on issues and didn't vote just with one side, right? So we were in a lot of conversations and a lot of issues. And he was up for re-election soon after. And that was obviously, very high profile. I think at the time, his reelection, we spent collectively more money than like most any other Senate race at the time.
Yeah.
And he lost, but it was an amazing experience to be part of that and to work with a great team and to work with him and to kind of see it up close and personal. And I also, he gave me the opportunity to be chief of staff at a very young age. I was probably the youngest chief of staff in the Senate, or almost the youngest. And that experience taught me and reinforced the need to, I'm never going to know everything. So you need to go find the people who are going to help you and be your mentors and your friends and allies, and go out and ask for feedback and get help. And that's going to make you better and your organization better. And it's something that I've taken to heart and use in all of my professional experiences.
So where did your interest in politics, public policy, public service, where did that come from, do you think?
It started as a young age. I often talk about, I have this vivid recollection of doing a school report on former Congresswoman Pat Schroeder from Colorado. And I just remember thinking, wow, she's this congresswoman. She's a woman. I think she was the first woman from Colorado. And she was before her time in a lot of ways. And I remember thinking, that's really cool. I wonder if I could ever do something like that, not necessarily be an elected official, but work in that environment. It just seemed really interesting. I have always been someone who likes both a diversity of experiences, but I also really like to learn. And I feel like just don't say no to a challenge, right? Take on the challenge and see what happens and be confident in yourself and you'll figure it out.
So you grew up in Massachusetts, right? Talk about growing up in Massachusetts. What was that like? What did young Vanessa do? Were you into sports, school, arts? What was your kind of your passion?
I was into a little bit of everything. So I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts outside Boston, did everything from playing soccer to getting really involved in school and being valedictorian of my high school class to friends and family. And I was really blessed to have parents who really pushed me to try new things, whether that was school, whether that was sports, whether that was taking piano lessons, and also not being afraid to fail. I remember in high school, soccer's really big in New England and in Massachusetts. And I tried out for the soccer team, the high school soccer team, my freshman year. All my friends made the team, but I didn't. And it was really hard, right? But my parents and we're just got to pick yourself back up and figure out what you're going to do next. And I found other activities that I wanted to do, and it was all fine. And I made it, and it's all great. But I think that those type of experiences and having that support and that backbone from your parents and your family really helped me and helped make me who I am today.
Everyone, you asked about role models. Certainly your parents, I'm sure you would list as role models. Were there others or mentors or folks along the way at an early age that kind of you look back on now and kind of steered you in a positive direction?
I think mentors and champions are so important. And I never feel like I had a formal mentor, but I just had multiple people along the way. And honestly, as I think about my role here at the Indiana Chamber and kind of who I am as a professional woman and leader, I was really lucky both on Capitol Hill and subsequent to that to have some really strong, awesome women bosses who showed me the way and who also were working moms and who showed me that that was okay too. And to this day, I sometimes will say, what would have X person done in this situation? And then I go think about how I'm going to go do that. So been very lucky to have those mentors. And I tell people all the time who ask me to help them, because I love that, because I want to pay it forward, right? Someone did it for me. And so now I want to do it for the next generation. And I just talk about the importance of your network and the fact that that network is everything, and be nice to people, right? Answer the call, help them out if you can, right? Because the world is small and people remember that. And you never know when kind of the tables are turned or whether you might need some help. And so just be nice and helpful. It goes a long way.
Yeah. That's good advice. So Dartmouth College, right? Your college choice. Did you think about other places? Why did you pick Dartmouth?
Yes. So I was really wanting to go to Georgetown in DC because of my interest in government and politics. And my father actually is the reason that I went to Dartmouth. And he said to me, Vanessa, you have the rest of your life to live in DC if you want, but Dartmouth is a great school. It's a great community. I think that you would really excel and do well at it. And I think you should go there. And I know not everyone listens to their parents, but I did that time. And I had an amazing experience at Dartmouth that opened my eyes and gave me so many different, both academic, but professional internship experiences and just life experiences. And lo and behold, my dad was right. I spent 20 years in Washington, D.C., so it all worked out.
Ah, that's perfect. Okay, so your Indiana connection, you're married to a guy, a Hoosier, right, from Clay County in the Wabash Valley in Indiana State Sycamore. How did you guys meet?
My husband is Chip Sinders, and he and I met at a bar on Capitol Hill one Saturday night. He was working for former Senator Dick Lugar at the time, and I was working for Senator Judd Gregg. And I say this sometimes publicly, his pickup line was, I think I've seen you around the Senate. I mean, it couldn't get any more great or awful. I don't even know. But he's amazing. And he has been such an amazing partner to me in supporting my professional career. And, 2 years ago, we decided DC is great, but Indiana is where we want to be right now. We have 2 little boys, a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and it has been an amazing transition. And it's just been great to be back.
Final question for you, Vanessa. What, as you look over the next year, maybe a couple of years, kind of the vision at the Indiana Chamber? I know you have a lot on your plate. You're getting around the state in a big way to connect with businesses. What do you see as big focus areas for the Indiana Chamber and the business community going forward?
My focus over the next couple of years, the Indiana Chamber has an economic vision plan for the state, Indiana Prosperity 2035. We have a history of putting out these plans that lay out the big issues and opportunities for the state from a policy perspective that we need to address to continue staying on top, right? And we put out the latest plan last August. And my view is it is our job now to, as I like to say, take the words off those pages and implement them. And a lot of that will be through our work collaboratively with legislative leaders and the new governor on different policy initiatives at the State House, but then also working collaboratively with other stakeholders, philanthropic organizations, other partners across the state to implement those solutions in other ways. And to do it, I am just such a big believer in, yes, we are the largest broad-based business advocacy organization, but we also, I think, have a job of working collaboratively with other partners to get things done. And so my vision is for us to really be a strong convener, a strong leader on all of these issues, and to represent the voice of business, but to do it in a very collaborative, partnership-focused way, because it takes all of us working together.
Yep. And you are well on your way to doing that. Certainly. Vanessa Green Sinders, the president and CEO of the Indiana Chamber. Vanessa, always great to catch up with you. Always great to see you out and about. Your energy is contagious and I think is having a positive impact on the state. So we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. We are a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can catch all of our episodes and Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.